Hey friends, listen, I don't think you're stuck because you're not trying. I think you're stuck because you've confused productivity with transformation. And you're talking to the person that has done that the most. Welcome back to The Messy Garden. If you are listening on podcast or if you are watching me, I appreciate y'all being here with me. I have some notes here. I really want to kind of sit like I would be sitting here talking to you over coffee or whatever. And I know that this title was a little edgy, but this is the way that I roll. And you're talking to the productivity queen from birth, from the very strict religious organization that I was born into. This cult-like mentality was very, very into productivity. It was actually into anything that could track time, study better, study harder, know more. And so I had learned from a really young age to value being productive. Now, obviously, we all have the same 24 hours in the day. We all have the same time. And so I wanted to be as useful with my time as possible. Now, I happen to be a writer and I love to read and I love to intake knowledge. And we have been born into the era of information. You know, we have information at our fingertips all the time, every time. When that really started to explode, someone like me on the scene, even here, sitting here, you watching YouTube or you listening to this podcast, I would be doing you a disservice if I said, hey, this is all you need to do every day, all day, because we've confused this idea of being more productive or intaking more and not outputting enough. And we're going to really dive into that today and what that looks like. And I'm really glad that you're here with me. But I know that you've done it because I've done it too. We have journaled ourselves into our own library. If you are anything like me, we could probably fill up a public library with our journals. And I'm not saying that that is not right because I am a writer. So I do process things through journaling. I believe actually we'll be doing some videos. I think writing is very important. And even if you aren't a writer, you need to be doing some sort of writing. But what we can do is we can start getting stuck in this loop of thinking that the more we do the more productive that we are, or start hacking our way through learning, through taking too much in, and then we just continually get stuck in these loops. You know, I have early education centers, and there are stages to development. There are still stages to development as an adult. The way that our brain can intake information, the way that it's filed, the way that it's useful, the way that it feels important. A lot of times we may listen to something that like really speaks to us and we're like, man, we need to do something with that. But then we're on to the next episode. We're on to the next whatever. And I've been trying to do my episodes here so that they're kind of in group and in pairings. If you've noticed that it's repenting, surrender, abiding, and productivity is a part of that. Because at the end of the day, we're in our messy garden, figure out what old seeds are growing, what weeds are growing, what needs to be planted. And a lot of times we may just be unaware. And I believe that this is one of the hardest ones because what it does is it seems like it's good. You know, it seems like it's productive. It seems like we're doing something right. Our brain is actually even telling us we're doing something right. It feels good to sit there and ruminate our emotions out. And yet we're still staying stuck. And if we're still staying stuck, then we're not growing. So something in there is not working the way that it should, or the way that God designed us to work. I know that you're trying hard, so we have to really talk about this. We have to talk about the parasite. Productivity came on the scene when we really started documenting time around the Industrial Revolution. And I'm glad that we drive cars. You know, things that we can do with the resources that we have, right? The things that we do with the resources that we have is essentially the definition of productivity. I'm thankful that we live in the age and we have thought of things wiser with the time that we have. However, anything good can always be abused, can always try to confuse us with our time and the way that God created us to be. Spiritual productivity really jumped on the scene, where it was like more things to do in order to increase the knowledge that you have in the time that you have. And that seems like a good idea, but where does all that knowledge go? It goes to be stored. We become puffed up with knowledge because we aren't having enough output at the end of the day. It looks very spiritual to be very into productivity from a spiritual level, and yet we're still staying in our same cycles, and that's not where God wants us. God wants us to be transformed. And we can spend years working on ourselves and never be transformed. And we can think that we are doing the right things, and we aren't. The more things that we do to try to hack things in our life, we will be moving, but are we moving in the right direction? I think that we really need to address this, especially even as Christian women who love the whole productivity hacks of everything, of the household, of our time, of our health, of our walk with God. It's like, how produceful can I be in order to feel worthy? And if you really let that sink in for a second and you ask yourself that question, then what does God say about that? I said before about the Industrial Revolution, when we started really tracking our time, and then it kind of crept into the church world with works-based faith, that our work itself defined our worth with God. And so we were able to say, okay, the more that we do, the more valuable we are to God. And then the self-help sort of revolution came around. And it was like, the more that we can work on ourselves, the more that we do for ourselves, then we become better at living this life. And it really turned to the flesh instead of what God says. And if we really go back to the messy garden, we're in this garden, and some parts of our garden can look really productive. Actually, when I was in the messy garden, I really wanted to hack so many things. Man, I did so much research on like hybrid vegetables, heirloom vegetables, what was the best fertilizer to use, what was the best compost to use, all of these things. Of course, using the wisdom that we have to create something special or something beautiful, there's nothing wrong with that. But we've almost done this with every single aspect of our life because we have a really funny relationship with time. And as long as we can cram as much things as possible into such a short period of time, then that makes us feel more valuable. And that kind of goes into the spirit of the concubine, which we will go into on a further episode. So the workspace faith, self-help revolution. And this starts to hijack our brain, because our brain loves hacks, and it loves systems, and it loves things to do. It just likes the more intake, because a lot of that intake can keep us comfortable. It's comfortable to read more, listen more, watch more, journal more, than actually take the action steps needed in order to change what needs to be changed in our life. There are two main ways that we deal with discomfort. The first that everyone is talking about is managing those emotions. Really journaling about the emotions. Tell me how you feel. Write down how you feel. Everything is about how you feel. And if someone has told you that your emotions don't matter, that absolutely is not true either. But we're in a stage where it's like, let's just ruminate and talk about our emotions instead of identifying where those emotions came from. You know, you may have gotten in this loop where you can journal every day, or study every day, or listen to something every day, or watch something every day that keeps you in this loop of gaining more insight, but not really changing the behavior, not really dying to yourself. I had wrote about this at one point, that we put ourselves on long-term hospice. We put our flesh on long-term hospice, and we call it becoming. Instead of that, Jesus says that we die to flesh and we become new. We become reborn. And what we do is that we want to become, and we do that in a slow manner and really confuse ourselves and think that we're actually doing something. So many people know so much about themselves right now, but absolutely are not changing. It's like they can define every single issue that they have, every single problem that they face, every single emotion that they have, but there's no way to integrate that and change. And when productivity came upon the scene, everybody was a productivity expert. And this just boomed because people wanted to take the time that they had and put more into it, because the schedules became so packed that they weren't able to slow down enough in order to live life the way that God intended it. It used to be lived in rhythms, sun up, sun down. And now it's like we have to crush so many things into such a small period of time because our plate is too full. And then when our time with God is, we want to consume so much instead of walking with Him in the garden to actually change the behavior that we have, that we become stagnant and we become unable to move through that, unable to process it correctly. I want to read this really quick. Activities that feel productive, checking off tasks, organizing thoughts, gaining new insight, activate the brain's reward system. They provide a sense of control and accomplishment. This reinforces the behavior, even if the behavior is not leading to real change. Meanwhile, actions that would disrupt that pattern, such as making a difficult decision or confronting the truth in the matter, can trigger discomfort and uncertainty, and at that point, your brain will just shut it off and say, no, thank you. Your brain wants to keep you safe. And anything that triggers that anxiety that comes up, that actually takes the action steps in order to make the change that we need to change, instead of ruminating on the emotion. Like we are pruning the top of the plant, but we aren't going to the root issue of the matter. And that's why I describe it as a parasite, because it feeds on your desire to improve. Our desire is always to grow. A plant wants to grow. You want to grow. It feeds on that desire and calls it growth even when it's not growth. It keeps you busy enough to feel responsible, but not free enough to actually produce. It keeps you free enough to feel responsible, but not free enough to change. And you could start to feel this discomfort. I know that I have many times in life. And one of those discomforts came from when I first started this channel. I had been given the vision by God many years ago. I knew that this was my next step to take. And so I just wanted to prepare for it. I think I talked about this in the Lies of Waiting video. But I thought the more that I prepared, that I was doing something toward the goal. And it wasn't until I actually got on this camera, and it wasn't until I started speaking and started doing what God told me to do, that I actually started changing the behavior. I was avoiding doing what I was told to do because it felt discomfort. It felt scary. It felt like I was going to be rejected. It felt like, what if I fail? What if I say something dumb? All of these things that your brain does. No, let me just journal some more. Let me learn some more about YouTube or about podcasting, or let me get better at this or better at that. You know, I wasn't getting better. I was actually taking so much knowledge at that point that it was stuck. I remember being so overwhelmed with certain things, because what God has done for me is He usually gives me like a download of something really important. And I was like, man, that's it. Actually, this productivity is a parasite several weeks ago. I have known throughout my life that once you learn something, you need to teach it. It signals a deeper part of your brain in order to retain the information better and actually to talk it through. We were designed to do things. And that's why you need people to converse with and talk with. And when you isolate yourself so much into productivity and into doing things that hack your time and more journaling and more consuming, you start to, it starts to bring a discomfort, because your brain can only hold like so much, where it just starts to just all run together. And I remember reading old posts or my old journals, and I was like, man, I wrote that. I completely forgot that I wrote that. I completely forgot that God said that. And it's because I wasn't taking the action after that conversation that we had together. It wasn't because I wasn't taking the action into doing what I needed to do. Like in the gifts of the Spirit, if one of mine is teaching, and I really truthfully don't know it is, I don't think that I am the greatest teacher. I feel like I need to be pretty quick with the manner in which I relay the information. God told me to do what he wanted me to do, and it was to take the messy garden and use it to relay the information that he gave me to others so that it would help others live a life with him. And when productivity came on the scene, it was kind of like attacking to me, because I was like, I would just be journaling and doing things and feeling like I wanted to keep doing that, and then I wouldn't change. And it started to become so uncomfortable for me because I knew that I wasn't doing the action steps necessary. You know, in the garden, you can plant all day long. You can plant as many seeds as you want to, and it will be overgrown. It will be choked out. There's actually part of gardening that, especially like the tiny little seeds, like carrot seeds or something, and you put them in a row, and you have to take out a lot of the seeds once they start to sprout up. You have to take out a lot of those sprouts because there won't be enough room for them all to grow. So you have to know what you need to take out and what you need to put in. And then the natural process of growth is tending to that and then harvesting it up. You have to harvest it. You have to have the output that you need in order to grow other things again. And if you continue just to stack and to grow on top of one another, it's just not going to work. Healing is not the same as management. Management contains and organizes. It allows you to manage life more effectively, but it doesn't fundamentally change the internal structures of where those thoughts, where those emotions, and where those behaviors came from. Healing is through integration. Integration is the process where you take all of your story, your past, your present, and it allows them to be fully processed and fully incorporated. The Lord told me that this was compost one day, and I'm going to dig into a deeper video of this as well. One day I was asking him what he thought of me. This was a really low point. And I was just writing out kind of things that I knew, that I was his daughter, that I was loved, that I was forgiven, all of these things. And then all of a sudden he said, "Kim, you are compost." And I started laughing because Holy Spirit does this thing with me where he may give you like words that you normally would not use. He gives me a lot of things that I know that I can see the picture of it immediately. And he knew this word, compost. I would know what this word meant because I had studied compost. Compost was so important in the garden. Compost was every bit of scrap, everything that was dead, everything that someone would want to throw away, all of these things would be integrated into a pile, and then heat would process it and turn it, and air would need to be incorporated in order for all of that to break down into the most nutrient-dense soil there is to grow anything in. As I started processing this, he said, "I'm going to take everything that you have gone through, all of your story. Your story is never wasted. And I want to tell you this right now. No part of your story can be wasted. You can do that, but God will not waste any part of your story if you will allow him to walk with you in your garden." And he said, "I'm going to do all of this, Kim, and there's going to be the processing of it, right? There's going to be the heat and there's going to be the turning of it, but it's going to be the most nutrient-dense soil where not only you will be able to grow in, but you will take others in and they will be able to grow themselves." And so it's one thing that we do in our company when we walk people through the process of integration is composting. And doing that from a spiritual level, a mental level, and how to really do that properly so that we can take everything and we can integrate it in, and we're not so focused on our productivity or what we're doing, but how are we actually integrating what we've learned, what God says for one thing. What we've been told or what we believe, how we feel is very important. And then where did those feelings and those emotions come from? And what does God say about those? What's his rewritten story? What's his story of redemption upon the things that we would have wasted, that feel like that we have wasted? I think that's a really important process to go through, because if we just stay in the productivity mindset where it's all about taking the resources that we have and the time that we have in order to be more productive, and we aren't taking the time to actually integrate all of that together and then take the action steps necessary for behavioral change, then we will always stay stuck. And the kind of transformation that God wants to take you through cannot be rushed. There are parts of you that cannot be rushed through this, no matter how many hacks that you have. He wants to take you through. He wants to walk with you in the cool of the day. He wants to be there with you to uproot. This can take some time. This takes a process. It may have some heat to it. It needs some air to it. You may need some help in doing it. Living in community together with other people that can help you process through this. We can't always hack our time to be more productive when we have to sit and abide with him in order to experience the true change. And you know, there's a lot of things in the Bible, and I think that I'll probably go into meditation at one point, because that is something that is completely misunderstood, but is absolutely necessary in your walk with Christ. And how do you really do that? Go back to the repenting, the surrendering, and the abiding, and then come to the table and say, okay, Lord, I am ready to sit here with you, even if it's in silence, and not do anything else but just talk to you. And if you don't hear from him, then you sit again and you sit again, because we have rushed ourselves so much in this life that we have a hard time even hearing from God anymore. And he's constant. He's faithful. He's never going to change. And we have to sometimes sit and process the things. Allow him to take us back to those old roots, back to those old emotions. He just did that the other day with me. I was sitting there and I had felt an emotion that, coming from the religious structure that I was and being shunned, and rejection is a big thing with me, and it's a big thing with everybody. No one wants to be rejected, and especially when you have to such a degree that it's so painful. And he walked me back to this point. And I think I was 11, 12 years old. I had a meeting with the leaders of the congregation at the time, and I was accused of something that really, really broke my heart. He took me back to that first point of me truly feeling like someone close to me didn't have my back, and that I wasn't good enough at that point for anyone and for any relationship. And maybe the more I did, the better I would be. I was good at working, and even at a young age wanting to be an entrepreneur, and maybe that would be something more I could do. I wanted to do more to prove my worth to people so that I wouldn't be rejected again. And he will take you back to those spots, because you have to process those emotions. Those emotions stay stuck in your body. We are a full being. We are physical, we are mental, we are spiritual, we are a full being, and our body remembers things. So once we go back and we process those emotions, I mean, I bawled like a baby on the sofa. He showed me where he was with me in that time. He was there. And there was somebody there that hugged me afterwards, and he showed me that he hugged me through them. And I just bawled like a baby, because I wanted to know the root of some of these issues. And of course, like, you can always, from a macro point of view, kind of identify some things, what kind of family you were born into, what you had to deal with as a child. You can identify some of these things. But I wanted him, because No one knows you like he does. And I wanted him to take me back to that place and time, and he did. And just the relief, the emotional release that I had then, I was able to process something that I wasn't capable of doing at that age. And he can do that for you. If you're here listening to me right now, you are trying to work on yourself. And I'm proud of you for doing that. True healing doesn't come from being busier or doing more or trying to be more productive. It comes from sitting in silence and truth and honesty. And you can ask yourself a question right now. Where am I staying busy, so busy, and hacking everything in life, consuming too much to avoid a deep-rooted truth? That is where true healing will come from. Allow God to take you to those deep-rooted truths. If you can do one thing this week and uncover one hidden root that was planted maybe long ago, what would that mean for your life? You don't have to keep thinking of adding more and ways to be more productive. Sit with him and allow him to love and guide you through this. What is already there will begin to process and will begin to compost, and it'll get you closer to where you truly want to be, which is fully integrated with Christ, which is experiencing the fruits of the Spirit and that peace and that love and that hope, and then giving it away to others. Give this knowledge away to others. Call someone up and say, hey, I learned something new about what I've been doing, and I want your help with this. You want to walk this journey with me? And let us know in the comments as well. I would love to hear from y'all. And there will be more to come soon. I'm so thankful that you are on this journey. I'm thankful that you're on it from the beginning. I have thought about this for so long. I have tried every productivity hack there was to make this just do itself. And I'll tell you, it didn't happen until I actually started the process of doing it. And it feels really good to say that I am. All right, y'all. I'll talk to you next time.